Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. I did say at the end of the last video that as a very selfless act, a gift to people, I was going to head off for a couple of days of rest after the tour, just to try and make something happen in the world of Tottenham Hotspur, and lo and behold it did. Spurs have splashed out, wow, £55 million plus another 10 in add-ons for a new striker in Dominic Solanke. And technically, I don't know if it was the perfect storm of days off, because it felt like the bulk of what happened on Friday, which also happened to be my birthday. So I'm very, very old now. But it felt like, you know, there was the meeting of the day off and the birthday that maybe helped push things on. And I had to do a tiny bit of work as well because of it. So that was the counterbalance. But hey, we got something done, and quite an important piece of the puzzle, I think, as we'll discuss a little bit later. But I was back on Saturday at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in front of a very big crowd, actually, near sellout crowd, to watch Solanke be unveiled, Harry Kane return, a friendly that was very much like a friendly in certain aspects. You could feel that. Some of these warm-up games have definitely felt like warm-up games, and we're seeing bits and pieces of the kind of the squad come back together, and I think we saw some of that in the second half, and it's still all very bitty right now, and I don't mean Little Britain kind of bitty, because that would be very weird. But yeah, it was a bit like the game, the previous one in South Korea between Spurs and Bayern. It was kind of a game of two halves, and you can take that either meaning the two halves of the pitch, because very differing things happen in each side, or you can take it as two halves of the actual game itself. It just felt like bits and pieces are still being reintroduced. We had the players that came back. We had Romero, Van der Ven and Bentancur were back in the squad, but obviously you could only play 45 minutes at the most, really. And then you had, you know, the tease, as it were, of Dominic Solanke there being unveiled before, and and what he will bring. But again, as I said, we will discuss that. I'm going to get into, there's a fair bit of Solanke stuff to be taken, because Postecoglou's spoken about him, Harry Kane's spoken about him, and the man himself, Dominic Solanke, has spoken about it. And actually, so have people around Bournemouth, which I think is also quite important in discussing him. But yeah, it still feels, I feel like this season we're going to see a different way round of the Tottenham Hotspur experience, as it were. Because last year, you know, pre-season was a bit of a mess, as we discussed before, and they went into the season, though, in a good frame. Obviously, the Shakhtar game was a good kind of, here's the season about to start, and they had Barcelona as well, didn't they? And then they went into the season, and we all know what happened next. 10 games or so unbeaten, then things started to kind of go a little bit awry because of the injuries, things like that, and of course ended up fifth, which was fine. More goals scored than the previous season, fewer goals conceded, more points, we know all of that, but ultimately it was definitely not as much as Postecoglou wanted than the squad wanted. So this season I feel like it might be a slightly different way round, because it feels like this pre-season, with the players coming back a little bit later, the ones who've done well internationally, like I say, you've got Romero, Van der Ven and Bentancur, who could be three quite key players this season. I feel like after watching Bentancur yesterday, I think he's probably going to have a pretty decent season. I know it's very difficult judgment, 45 minutes, but I just felt he looked quite sharp. I think it felt he looked a lot sharper than he had been. And you know, with Uruguay and the Copa America, he didn't. I'm trying to think if he started any games, or not many. Maybe just the one he came off injured in. I'm trying to remember now, but he didn't play as many minutes as he could have, like someone like Romero. And I think that maybe continued to ease him back into football life, as it were. So you've got Romero, Van der Ven and Bentancur, but then also you had a doggy came back yesterday for his first minutes of football since April. You've got Richarlison back in training, Fraser Forster to a lesser degree, but they are both back in training now. And of course, Solanke still to come in, and more transfers to come. And I think we might end up, rather than starting like a freight train Spurs, I wonder whether this time it will be the other way around, where they'll maybe start a little bit slowly as the players are starting to get back into the rhythm of it, but then you'll notice as the season goes on, the extra quality, the added numbers, they'll be able to withstand more problems that they face during the season, and actually that might provide more consistency and a level of quality throughout. The key, of course, is a couple more signings, but we're going to also explain how that's going to have its slight issues, and yes, it's the homegrown foreign player stuff. I don't know why I went down the rabbit hole last night. I was writing up all my talking points after the game. It was a very, very late night because I got back late from the game. And I decided, oh, do you know what? I haven't checked that in a while. And part of me is glad I did because I understand it again and looking at it and seeing where Spurs are at, whereas I kind of switched off a bit and just was like, transfers, please. And kind of forgot that, you know, there's the other side to it that they do have to keep in check with. But then the other side of me was like looking at some of that stuff at 1:30 in the morning or later, trying to piece it all together. So please forgive me later when I'm explaining it. It's one of those where I can just about barely keep up. So you trying to keep up from how I will awfully describe it, I completely understand if you just go, yeah, I'd rather read about that. So if you do, it's in my talking points from last night's game. But I guess the other good thing, I suppose, about the players coming back is that, let's say, Van de Ven, for example. Van de Ven, last season, we know, came in, I think he had one training session and then went into the game against Brentford, and that was it. And, you know, it was like flung into the Postecoglou way, whereas at least this time he'll have had 45 minutes of friendly opposition match, get decent side as well, Bayern Munich. Then he will also have 2 weeks of training before the first game. So he's actually, in a strange way, kind of better prepared. Yes, he had a pre-season of sorts with Wolfsburg last summer, but this time round, look, 3 weeks between, or just over 3 weeks after an international tournament, coming back to a squad, you're probably not going to lose that much sharpness and rhythm, and especially in this day and age where the players keep themselves at a ridiculous kind of level. Just to let you know, a couple of bits of housekeeping. First off, Indy is in here. Indy is my dog, as people may have seen. He was on the sofa, and I was thinking, yeah, we're going to get a nice little Indy cameo at the start of this. And about 20 seconds before I went to hit record, he was like, nah, I don't like it up here. So he's gone down on the floor, and he's lying on my foot currently, which is fantastically warm on a very warm day. And the other thing, which people might notice, is I'm actually wearing an AFC Richmond shirt. I was trying to think, I don't think I've ever worn another club shirt at any level of football. I don't think so. I've worn a couple of different country shirts when I was young and stuff like that. But I don't think I've ever worn another club shirt. And I just kind of, it was a gift from my youngest daughter for my birthday, and I thought, why not, I'll wear it. And technically, it's a fictional club. I know there is a team in Richmond, but AFC Richmond, from what I understand, is a fictional club created for the show. It does also have Kent and 6 on the back. It's a very nice t-shirt. So I thought, I'll wear it, it's a bit different. Just in case anyone's looking at it and thinking, oh, that's weird, he's wearing another club shirt. Way off piece there, completely going in a different direction. So we'll pull it back to Tottenham Hotspur, but just essentially with Indy, if the ice cream truck goes by, he will bark. If a fly flies by the window, he will probably bark. It's just us two in today, so I just wanted to give you prior warning. He may suddenly go mad for no apparent reason. So Postecoglou was asked yesterday about the 3 returning players in Romero, Van de Ven, and Bentancur, and whether there'd be I wondered this as well, whether there might be a behind closed doors friendly, another one that had obviously played Cambridge United start of pre-season, and on the tour the under-21 players played Japan under-20s. So quite a valid question to Postecoglou. Will you have another behind closed doors friendly in the next week or so, bearing in mind it is a long period before the game on a Monday night against Leicester? To which he said, no, our training is pretty good in terms of getting people up to speed. It is a Monday night game, so we have a couple of extra days for us. I think the 45 minutes today will be good for them, and we will do some good work with them over the next 10 days. Destiny Udogie as well has also has already been training a bit longer than that. We've kind of protected him from games, but only because he'd been out for a while, but he has been training a little bit longer than the other guys. The guys who came back this week from international duty, it's a matter of trying to get them up to speed. They've all come back in good condition, which helps, but I think getting them 45 minutes today against a really good opponent, I think they'll feel better about that. I don't know why I'm reading a really weird, stilted way, and we'll use it next week. Those 10 days to gauge how ready they are. But again, I see no reason if they get through our training week that they wouldn't be ready. Look, as for the game itself, it'd be quite easy, I think, to look at it and go like, the defence, And I kind of was a little bit like that myself at half-time, but I kind of looked at it as a whole, and you could see, first 45 minutes, just one member of the usual back four in Pedro Porro. Spurs looked vulnerable. They were, again, players not quite in their right positions. Jed Spence playing on the left. Jed Spence did okay. It's just not an ideal position for him because people can get in behind him. There was one strange moment where he and Porro were both occupying the same space in the middle of the pitch, which was a bit like, I think they might go through here, boys. I think there's a few spaces. And then, of course, you've got Ben Davies, more left back, playing as a central defender. He can do the job, but he's not ideal in there. So, yeah, a bit of a makeshift back four. Shock horror. Spurs look vulnerable. Bayern, very good team. Score 3 goals. 2 from the dreaded set pieces. And just a couple of daft mistakes as well. Actually, all 3 came from daft mistakes. And Postecoglou was clearly very unhappy with the 3 goals. But then you could also look at it second half. 3 of the regular back 4 come in Udogie, Van der Ven and Romero. Archie Gray playing very well as a right back. I thought he was really good in his 45 minutes. Shock horror. Bayern can't find any way through. Even with Harry Kane coming on for the last 10 minutes, they could not find a way through. So it's one of those where I could sit here and wail and throw my arms up in the air and go, the set pieces, the defending, Or then I could just look at the second half and say, yeah, that's more like the defence that are going to start the season, and maybe they looked a little bit more kind of prepared and able to deal with those kind of issues. And also, new coaching staff in there with Nick Montgomery and Sergio Raimondo, and, they're going to be working with these players as well. So, yeah, there's a lot of people, kind of new staff, new players coming in. So, yeah, I'm not going to go absolutely crazy about the defending yet. If this trend continues with the regular first teamers into the season, they're still conceding sloppy set-piece goals and things like that, then absolutely, it has to become a talking point. But at the moment, I don't think it's quite right to judge them when there's not the correct personnel in those positions. I do think, especially with set pieces, it's a bit iffy to do that. It doesn't quite apply, as it were. But yeah, I mean, I seem to get this question every day. Just to reiterate, set piece coach, Ange very clearly stated halfway through last season he doesn't want them, doesn't work with them, won't have one. So I still get asked, is there going to be someone doing this? Is going to be bringing someone who's going to do that? And the answer, unless there's an incredible U-turn in the career of Ange Postecoglou after, 26 years of coaching, the answer seems to be not. The reason he gave for it at the time was that he feels like the coaching of the set pieces should be within his coaching unit. It should be part of their ability to suddenly break away with the ball from those set pieces and play in his way. It's all meant to be part of the same kind of whole, as it were. So, yeah, that's that really. I don't know whether we'll see a bit of a change up in roles in who does what. That could happen. I did ask him about that in, I think it was a sit down in Korea. And I probably said it in the last video. He fluffed around it a bit. I wonder whether he's still trying to work out exactly who he wants to do what over the course of the season. I think it was Mile Jedinak doing defensive set pieces before, and Matty Wells was working on some of the defensive aspects of the team. Not set pieces, but more just normal defending. So yeah, whether those roles do change, whether Nick Montgomery takes on any of that, or Sergio Raimondo does, we'll see. Or it just gets moved around. We'll find out. It might be one. Sometimes you can ask Ange a question and he will straight bat it away and you get nothing. And then a week later or 2 weeks later, you can ask exactly the same question, phrased in a slightly different way, and he tells you everything. We had that on the tour. I asked him about strikers in the first week of the tour, and he just wouldn't say anything about strikers. And I asked him in a sit-down about strikers, and he said, yeah, we're going for a striker. I was like, okie dokie, there you go. So we'll see. But yeah, I appreciate people are very curious about the subject, but no set-piece coach unless he has a massive U-turn in his entire thinking on coaching. We don't have to agree with that. We can have our differing opinions on that. Although, technically, Spurs have, not that I can remember for a while, had a specialist defensive set-piece coach. Gianni Vio, I'm sorry to re-stress this once again, was an attacking set-piece coach. So that's a different thing. He did not work on any defensive aspects of the team. So yeah, we'll see. The game itself, obviously, Dejan Kulusevski scored within 24 seconds. And you kind of thought, whoa, look what's going to happen today. It was a funny goal. He kind of made it himself, really. Got his foot up to intercept a headed pass in the halfway line. Brennan Johnson chased on with the ball, knocked it just behind Decky. A defender just fluffed at it, and then the ball kind of fell back into Kulusevski's path, and he poked it into the net. And you kind of were thinking, here we go. This is it. Fresher Spurs, not the knackered Spurs of before. They're going to run riot. But then I think we saw what having a makeshift back four against a team with the attacking quality of someone like Bayern is what's going to happen. They were in a very generous mood, of course, as well. Deep free kick, swung in, 2 Bayern players at the back post completely free. And yeah, Matthias Tell heads it back across goal. Vicario made a decent save. I'm wary of being too critical of him because it was point blank range and you just kind of got a hand to it. But there was Deo Upamecano, who, if you look back early in the move, had absolutely wrestled away Brennan Johnson, sent him to the floor, and he was just there on his own to tap in, really. Second goal for Bayern, another mix-up, very familiar, very similar to the one in Korea against Bayern as well, wasn't it? But this time, rather than Vicario passing the ball to Jed Spence in the middle when he wasn't in the greatest position to receive it, it was Bissouma. Bissouma's closed down quickly. Ball's kind of got, and I think Muller maybe had an effort or a cross and it was deflected back out and goes to Serge Gnabry, who, to be fair, hits a lovely low shot inside the far left corner. So, yeah, it's not the greatest couple of minutes of football in the world. And just, I think, another reminder that if they're going to play, which they are under Postecoglou, the fast ball through to the 6 or the 8, whoever's coming back, to spread the ball quickly out to the wings, the whole thing has to be quick. There can't be any hesitation. It can't be a slow ball. It can't put the midfielder in a tough spot. It's just got to be perfectly where he wants it. And because pressing players for the attack of the other team are going to be more and more aware that they have to press for these moments. They have to get their foot in as quickly as possible. Otherwise, they know that ball's coming down the wing and suddenly they're going to get away from everyone. That noise was Indy scratching himself and knocking something over and then shocking himself that he knocked something over. It was you. It was you, mate. No one else did it. Yeah. Third goal, set-piece horror show again. Spurs players were all ready for like a direct free kick. They weren't ready for just a normal lofted-in pass. So they were all in, loads of them in a wall. One was lying behind the wall. And Bayern just went, okay, thanks for that. We're just going to knock it over to that guy over there. And yeah, Kulusevski left all on his own to try and mark 2 players. Managed to mark neither of them. And there's Thomas Muller, one of the most kind of legendary players over the years who don't want to leave in an opposition box or your own box, and he heads it home from close range pretty much unbothered. So yeah, and look, Spurs were better in the second half. They were much better, strengthened defence. Some of the underperforming senior players were also removed from the game who just weren't really contributing much. We'll talk about them a little bit, and that introduced some of the more exciting, more fearless players, I think is probably the best way to put it. And one of those was Lucas Bergvall. He intercepts a pass, touches it onto Sonny. Sonny plays it back into his path. It was a really nice little kind of 1-2 of sorts, with the interception being the first pass. And yeah, Bergvall takes in stride. Lovely pass into the path of Kulusevski, and his big brother, as he called him to me in Japan, clinically tucks it into the bottom corner, sending the keeper the wrong way, or just kind of giving the keeper the eyes more than anything. It was Bergvall's first assist at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in front of 61,084 fans. Very good crowd as well for a friendly. It will not be his last assist in that stadium. I thought he was really bright. His pressing, his touch, his movement, all really good. And that little weighted pass into the path of Kulusevski just shows that he kind of knows what he's doing. And this is against Bayern Munich, no less. Yeah, he's adjusting, I think, that little bit quicker to life at this level than maybe even people inside Spurs thought. He's still got a lot of adapting to do, and we haven't seen the pace of the Premier League yet and how that's going to affect him. But he's been a very good start for him, a very bright start. And it was another pre-season game in which he looked, an 18-year-old, looked far more effective for Spurs than the vice-captain, James Maddison, who is almost a decade older than him. Maddison had a couple of nice moments. I mean, one was a quick, clever free kick to Kulusevski. You had a shot saved by, it was Neuer, it was first half. Bizarrely, they gave a goal kick for it. I have no idea why. Neuer got his foot to it. And then he had an effort himself, Maddison, that he sent over the crossbar. Sorry if you can hear any scratching. That is Indy scratching his face for no apparent reason. Well, there is a reason. He's itchy. Yeah, so Maddison came off at half-time. Can't really have any complaints. As did Bissouma. I thought Bissouma started the game really well and really bright. And went on a couple of runs, and you're thinking, here we go. Here's the Bissouma of old, or the start of last season. They just kind of faded. He faded as the game wore on. That was why Spurs looked vulnerable, I think, because he wasn't covering as well at the back. And quite worryingly, again, he hasn't played more than 45 minutes yet for Spurs. He's either played the first half of the game or the second half of the game. He has not made it through an hour yet, which is not good. It really isn't going into the Leicester game. It's not helpful for him whatsoever if he's going to last a Premier League kind of length game, especially at the pace that Postecoglou wants it played at. So, yeah, to be fair, I thought Bergvall was going to come off at one point. It was this really kind of uncomfortable looking moment where he just seemed to suddenly go down on all fours at one point, and we couldn't quite tell whether he was being sick or whether he was like just gulping for air. Kind of assumed maybe he was winded or something. And you could see his teammates were a little bit concerned. They were calling over the medical staff. And then you could see him on the sideline just coughing a lot and trying to take a lot of liquid in as well. I asked Postecoglou afterwards what it was all about. And he said, I'm not really sure. He said he was struggling to breathe. And we had to sort of find out whether he swallowed something. I think it was nothing serious, and he was all right. And he was more than all right. He kept going for the rest of the second half. And yeah, it was a weird one. I think maybe swallowing something kind of going into his mouth, and that would make sense, maybe. Whether it was like a fly flew in there, or a bee, I don't know what it could have been, or a chunk of grass or anything. But he did seem to be very struggling with his throat in the immediate aftermath of it all. But it's quite worrying. Alfie Devine started to kind of get warmed up, and I think he even took his training top off at one point. I think he was ready, thinking he was coming on, but Bergvall was fine and played on and did very well, to be honest. It's just good for him, I think, with him and Archie Gray, who I thought was excellent, just to get that little taste early on what it's like to play in front of 61,000 or so people inside that stadium. I mean, even Dominic Solanke, when he was doing the unveiling, he was looking around going, like, wow. So these two 18-year-olds, they needed, I think, that experience just to have done that. And, it's not the pace or the noise of a Premier League game, but it's just enough for them to kind of experience, I guess. And yeah, I asked Postecoglou about that, whether that was a positive or an important thing, just to get them that little run out in front of the crowd. And he said, I thought it was positive. It was something tangible for us as a positive that they've had that run out now and they know what it feels like and playing in a full stadium. So I think they both had their moments in there as well. And look, they're going to be good players for us, no doubt. And the more exposure we give them, the more we'll help them develop. But yeah, the day was mainly really about strikers. 2.5 strikers, I would say. The half was Kulusevski. Once again, showing really good ability as a false nine. I still maintain that he has been Spurs' sharpest player of pre-season by a long way. I think he's looked so good and ready for the season ahead. Interestingly, Postecoglou said afterwards he won't be needed in that false nine role again because Solanke coming in, Richarlison coming back to fitness. I think, personally, I think it's a little bit early to call that. I do wonder whether there could be injuries, it could be a suspension or two, or even there just could be a game where tactically, even if it's midway through the match, requires a false nine rather than a natural kind of nine. But yeah, this is what he said when asked. He said, no, I don't think so. The good thing about Decky is that he can play that attacking midfield. I think the reason for us why we signed Dom, and hopefully Richie should be ready as well, is that we want to have a player through that area who's a bit more accustomed to that role. Decky's done a great job for us, but I think his strengths and attributes are more in that attacking midfield or wide role. I think he's really developing and has had a really good pre-season for us, and hopefully it gives us some more flexibility and potency through the middle when he's playing because he can get into those scoring areas. I think that's the key thing that has been really good for Kulusevski. I don't think he is the most prolific strikers. Well, yeah, strikers in a way. The most prolific of goal scorers because I think he's probably was more known for assists. He'll pop up with the odd important goal, but I think maybe this pre-season has shown him, look, you get in the right positions, you're going to score. You can do that. And I think that's been good for him in that respect. I do think he's also looked better centrally. We kind of know what it's like out wide. And he told me in Japan that I'm going to have to adapt to playing as a Postecoglou winger. He said that. But yeah, I do feel like there's moments where he will drop deeper than is required of a striker. You know, the Postecoglou striker needs to be high up there. And there was lots of points I felt like where you needed an outlet. Spurs needed an outlet. They needed someone to get the ball to and then kind of flood around because Bayern did have more of a possession. They needed to get out at times and they didn't have that because Decky was too deep. So yeah, Solanke looks to be the man. Well, he is the man. He's been signed now. He was unveiled before kickoff with Graham Bergvall as well. There's a nice little bit in the behind the scenes of his kind of whole day, I guess. I think it's Friday and Saturday combined, and then heading to the game. And there's a nice little moment where I think it's Bergvall rather than Archie Gray says to him, "No, you know, you got to go out first, big man. You're the new signing." I was quite nice. Like it's an 18-year-old saying that. But yeah, I mean, he's going to be an important one, Solanke, for Postecoglou. He's 26 now. He turned 27. You know, we always say about kind of Spurs signing players with potential rather than when they're kind of hitting their peak. Solanke, to be fair, is hitting his peak. This is you know, really can keep stepping on from where he has. Still going to keep saying, still having people saying that he's only had one good season. And I'll keep saying, look at the last 4 seasons. He scored 72 goals in the last 4 seasons. So it's not a one-season person. I think it's just, when it comes to the Premier League, he's just developed. It's just clicked for him. He's found that developmental kind of spurt that he needed. Yeah, just wait to see what he's like in the system. I think is going to be excellent. And to be fair, Postecoglou did tell me out in Japan that he was waiting for his original targets. He was sticking with them. They were still in play in the market. And lo and behold, here we are. Solanke was one of them. Postecoglou thinks he's perfect for his system. And I know that I said this in the last video, but I do suggest people do this. Watch the compilation of his 21 goals from last season. If you can find one, I think there's a few out. I certainly have watched one. You will see that there is, as you know, many of the chances that he had put away came from scenarios that will arise in the Postecoglou system, whether it's the low balls across, but also look at the way he presses high up the pitch, the turnovers, the link-up play as well. He's got a nice acceleration, skill on the ball as well. if you just think he's going to be a target man up there or someone that's just going to work hard, he's much more than that. He's got a lot of skill to him as well. He's going to win Spurs that ball back in the final third so much, and that is half of defending is done in the opposition half nowadays. That's what it is because of the pressing nature of the game. Look, you could quite rightly say, why didn't Spurs just sign him earlier if he was one of the original targets? And that's fair. I think it's just more that Bournemouth wanted to keep hold of him. They've been desperately trying all summer to keep hold of him. They've made no secret of that. There was this £65 million release clause, but in this day and age, just clubs don't really pay all of that up front. And in the end, they got their 65 million to a degree. Spurs 55 million as the basic fee, and I'm sure not all of that kind of in one lump either. I'm sure that'll be in bits, and then another 10 million or so in basic add-ons as well. It's Postecoglou was asked about him, and he said he was obviously one I was very keen to get in. It took a while to get it over the line, but I think he'll be a great fit for us in terms of the player he is and the point of his career where he's at. I think he will be a good fit. As I said, we're a bit light in that front third in terms of adding quality, not just to the squad, but also to our team. He certainly does that. I'm pleased to get him on board, and we have a week and a bit to work with him. We identified him because he has the attributes we're looking for in terms of our position. He gives us some things we probably have been missing in the last 12 months, particularly when Richarlison was out last year. When Richie played, he was very effective for us. It was quite evident when he was out, we didn't really have a player who can make the impact that Dom can in the final third, and just with his general play. So I think he will be a good fit for us. We've got him at a really good time in his career. He's had to work his way back up, which I think is always a good thing. Sometimes when careers go smoothly, you wonder how people will handle setbacks, but he had setbacks earlier in his career. He's fought his way back and he's become a really good Premier League striker now. He's really keen to push on. He wants to improve and make an impact. I think it's a great time for us to bring him in. And when he was told, Postecoglou, that Solanke could be seen to be saying wow as he looked around the stadium, Postecoglou again kind of spoke about the fact that it's so important to have players that are just really excited to come to Spurs. And he said, yeah, I think it is important. Players certainly have options out there, and you want to understand the motivations for why a player would want to come to us. Since I spoke to him, I got a real sense he had a real burning desire to take his football to another level and really challenge himself at a big club. He's keen to make an impact, and our job is to make sure we provide that platform for him. He's been on my radar a fair while, but again, you kind of look at players who've had interesting journeys, and with some players, things happen really early in their careers and they go really well, but then there's inevitable stumbles along the way and you want to see how they react. But Dom had a very bright start to his career, and he was at big clubs, which every player aspires to, but for one reason or another, it didn't work out for him. But the fact that he's got himself back to this position where he's, again, one of the premier strikers in the Premier League, it's a testament to his character. And he's only 27, about to turn 27. So he's only 26, about to turn 27. So I think probably because of those early challenges he had, I think he's going to try and push and have really strong and impactful, meaningful years from now on. He was asked whether he thinks Solanke will be fit to start at Leicester next Monday, and he said, yeah, I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be. He's played most of the pre-season. Slight knock in the last game Bournemouth played, but of course, we'll have a look at him during the week. But I think that considering he's done most of the pre-season, I see no reason why he wouldn't be available. Something else that's worth noting about Solanke is his character. I'd spoken to people anyway that have kind of been in and around, been around him or worked with him over the years, and they all say what a brilliant guy he is, what a great kind of professional he is, but also just what a nice person he is. And I don't think it's any surprise that kind of everything coming out of Bournemouth has been exactly the same. No one seems to have a bad word to say about him at all that I've spoken to or that we've seen in the public. I think the classy way he went about leaving Bournemouth as well is a big part of it. I mean, you know, you just look at the tributes. The club's chief executive, Neil Blake, absolutely lavished him with praise about his character. Andoni Iraola said on Saturday, his behaviour with us has been amazing. He's a top professional and a top player. He deserves the best because he's the player you want, professionally and also personally. He has given us everything he has, and we will be cheering for him. Even the farewell message he put out, we know what social media is like. It can be a very unpleasant, toxic place at times. So to put out a farewell message and have 100% of the replies actually be really pleasant, thankful, and wishing him the best and that he deserves this opportunity from the Bournemouth fans, was incredible. Look, I'm sure people will find one, and there must be one or two out there. But I swear, I scanned down as many comments as I could, both on his Twitter and his Instagram that he put out the post on. I couldn't find anyone having a pop or anything about him. And I think that is just the fact that he's given everything to them. He's worked hard, and they recognise this is his chance now. Didn't work for him at Chelsea and Liverpool, and now he's kind of just feels he's now ready to take that step again and be one of those players at a big club, and hopefully Spurs are going to benefit. He has been speaking himself. He said, I feel delighted. Obviously, it's a magnificent club, a huge club with ambitions that match mine, so I'm delighted to start, meet all the boys, and I can't wait to get started. What excites me most about the club is how ambitious it is. Obviously, a huge club with great ambitions that I want to be a part of as well. He's a great manager, great players, and I feel like it definitely suits my style of play as well. So I can't wait to get started and do my stuff on the pitch. I think the club has a great depth throughout the whole squad. Attacking options are great as well, and that's what a top club needs. I'm really looking forward to playing with them, competing with them, and hopefully we can achieve great things. I think me as a player, I'm ambitious on the pitch. I work hard for the team, score goals, leave it all out there, and I love winning. So hopefully we can win a few things together. That's when I'm going to bring that fighting spirit. And he does look quite strong. A lot of the stuff, you can really see defenders bouncing off him and stuff like that. Yet he's also got that pace. He could be a proper machine for Spurs if they can keep him fit as well. I think that's another important thing. And he said, I've had quite a journey in football. Everyone's journey is different, but I wouldn't change it as I've had a lot of ups and downs as well. And I think that's made me who I am today on and off the pitch. I'm grateful for everything, really, and hopefully I can carry on my form. I'm improving all the time. At the moment, I'm full of confidence, and I feel like my game has improved a lot. I'm at that point in my career where it's all starting to come together, and I think that was the start of last season. This season is not that far away, and I'm sure that the boys will make me feel welcome and we can learn from each other very quickly. But like I mentioned earlier, the style of play definitely suits me as well, and I'm looking forward to gelling with everyone. I would say my attributes are movement, goals, working hard, link-up play, and hopefully I can bring all that together for Tottenham. So yeah, honestly, you've heard me say about it. I know not everyone agrees, but that's the beauty of football. Everyone can have different opinions on people, but I do feel like within 6 months, I think we're all going to be looking at Dominic Solanke and thinking, oof, yeah, looks like a bargain now kind of thing. I do think he is going to essentially be Postecoglou's kind of Kyogo in this team, this Tottenham team. I think he's going to finish off so many chances. He's just going to be there. Whether it's with his head, sometimes the ball's going to be put in high, and I think he's a great aerial threat. He's got some lovely goals with his head last season. But I do think he's got that beautiful ability to just sweep home balls that come into the middle, and he's going to get into the right positions. I think he's also going to set up a fair few goals as well, or just force kind of turnovers that are going to lead to goals. So, yeah, we'll all be watching with bated breath, and I presume you'd think he'll start against Leicester. It would make sense, and I would imagine, certainly on terms of sharpness in pre-season, it'll be Brennan Johnson would be dropping to the bench. Another quiet pre-season display for him. And I just think Spurs need their new striker up front. They need him up there. Richarlison will have had a couple of weeks. He might even be in a position to be on the bench. And then I think you have Kulusevski and Son up there. And like I said, Kulusevski's got to adapt to that right-wing role. But I think he'll be fine. You know, who knows? He might even try Kulusevski on the left a couple of times to make it more natural for him to cut the ball across. But also, kind of like the idea of Kulusevski cutting in and putting a couple of those crosses in for Solanke to head home. So I think he can kind of do both. Talking of Richarlison came out quite strongly in the last few days and said that he wants to stay at Spurs. You know, a lot of interest from Saudi Pro League, a lot of money on offer. But I kind of like the fact that he wants to stay. He also put out an Instagram post of the stadium and him within it and just saying, you know, this is my home. I just thought I like that. We whinge and moan, and myself included, about players that go and chase money and go to, you know, other leagues and just you think, well, why have you gone there? Oh, it's for the money. And I think for him to want to stay at Spurs and want to fight for his place, I think that's massive. And I think that's really important. And I still maintain that if he can keep himself fit and available, that's the key thing. I think he's going to do very well for Spurs, as he did when he was available last season. And as I've maintained throughout, and this is what Ange said out on the tour, that area of the squad, the strikers one, is the weakest, thinnest area of the squad. So it would have made no real sense, in my mind anyway, to sell Richarlison unless you got such a good bid because of the availability and you replaced him with another. But it would have made no sense to sell him and replace him with Solanke. It's like, no, you need two natural strikers up there, and then you've also got Sonny who can play up there as well. So, yeah, I think you would have just been back to square one if you'd sold him and replaced him with Solanke. Whereas I quite like him and Solanke as the two options now. I think they're different players. I think they'll bring different kind of characteristics to it. And suddenly, you know, with the billion games they're going to have to play next season, you've got different options there. And you feel you'll be able to bring out Solanke and put Richarlison, and Richarlison will be absolutely champing at the bit to try and make a difference and make an impact and keep himself in for the next game. Shock horror. That's competition. That's what squads need to be about. It's not about backups. It's not about, oh, we've got too many in this position or whatever. It's about having players fighting it out with each other to get the role, get the shirt for the next week. Because ultimately, that's what drives players on to be even better. And that's what the best clubs have. Yeah, so I did think it was very fitting that Spurs would finally sign a big new striker on the day they properly said thanks for everything to Harry Kane, because I did think it would have been a little bit, you know, if they got to that stage and Harry Kane was coming back and everyone was like, you still haven't actually signed anyone to kind of replace him. I'm wary of using the word replace him because, let's be honest, there is no way of directly replacing Harry Kane. Solanke is not an exact replacement for Kane. Nobody is. Even if I do think he's going to score a lot of goals in the Postecoglou system, I think I've always said, and others have always said, I think it would always take two players to replace Kane and what he did for Spurs. Maybe that's Maddison and Solanke. Maybe it's Bergvall and Solanke. Maybe it's other people in either of those roles. But it is something that Spurs really needed to plan for years ago. But finally, at least it looks like it's happening now. They might not always be the quickest to get there, but sometimes they do eventually get there. And I love the fact that Kane was asked about Solanke after the game and he said he should be great. Dom is a great player, plays with high intensity, high speed. For sure he's going to get chances in this team. The way Ange plays, and you saw that again with two top teams going toe-to-toe. I think it's a really good signing. I saw him in the dressing room there and wished him all the best. I hope he has a great season, as we all do. The anime-loving Dominic Solanke, hence the mask that he wore, and I think you'll see a lot more anime-related stuff with him over there. I think even his introductory video was all anime-related. So, yeah, having just been in Japan and Korea and seeing a lot of anime over there, we'll see a lot of that as the season goes on with Solanke. And hey, it's got the backing of Harry Kane, so he's going to be brilliant. I just got really good vibes about how Solanke is going to do in this system. And I love the fact that, you know, we always say back the manager, and Solanke is a player that he identified early on that he wanted. If he wants him, feels he's a perfect fit, get him, give him to him. Let's see how it happens. Can't really argue too much with the players that, you know, Postecoglou has really sought out and wanted. They've all kind of done particularly well, other than the odd little kind of consistency issues with a couple of them. But yeah, oh, Indy, of all the times he was going to roll over and knock over the whole camera setup there, that would have been awkward. Yeah, it was Harry Kane's return. It was like full of little moments. There was little kind of things sitting up in the... I got out there a bit earlier because I knew they were going to do this little presentation on the pitch. It was very brief. Essentially, they waited for the ends of the warm-ups, and Ledley King and Harry Kane and Eric Dyer. Ledley King gave them both. It was like a small replica of the golden cockerel that sits on top of the south stand. And obviously, which in itself is a bigger mock-up of the one that was at White Hart Lane. So Ledley does that little presentation for them. And as they were coming off, Romero and Bentancur both grabbed them and gave them a big hug. There was a nice little moment in the tunnel before the game where loads of players were grabbing Harry Kane as well and giving him a hug. And then his introduction finally came in the 80th minute. I knew he'd come on late in the game. I didn't actually think it was going to be that late, but he kind of explains why. I got some quotes from him in a bit. It was just lovely because you could see the crowd saw he was coming on and the noise started to kind of go up. And Harry himself looks across and sees Will Lancashire is about to come on for Spurs. And he just kind of shouted across at him, and like they did a bit of a handshake kind of thing, one of those like kind of aerial kind of half high five, half handshakes, which I thought was really nice and fitting. It kind of created this lovely image of the 19-year-old striker that, yeah, Spurs would love to be even half of what Harry Kane became. That would be wonderful for Will Lancashire. But I just thought that was quite nice. And George Sessions from PA told me, I didn't see it, but he told me that after the game, Will Lancashire went over and asked Harry Kane for a shirt, to which Harry pointed to the dressing room and said, I will give it to you when we're in there. So that was cool. And when he did come on, Harry Kane's just cheer was huge, and it was singing his name. It was just really important to just have that proper send-off, that, I guess, almost closure in a way. And yeah, he came on. Sonny kind of delayed his coming off to come off for Lancashire. That allowed him to have another hug with Kane before he came off. And yeah, I did think it was probably best that Kane didn't score any of the couple of chances he had. They were real Kane kind of moments where he got the ball and pulled out slightly away from the defence and tried a pot shot from distance. I just kind of feel like maybe if he'd scored, it would slightly ruined it. I don't know. It probably wouldn't have. It probably just reminded everyone just of how good he was, in case anyone's forgotten. But I think it was quite fitting to come back and just, yeah, it all worked really nicely. And after the final whistle, he got to do the proper goodbye. He got to walk around the stadium, applaud all the fans, and have the farewell, I guess, he didn't have a year ago. So it was quite cool. And talking of quite cool, it was a very classy moment. They had it was the Visit Malta Cup they were playing for, that prestigious award. And Kane was now wearing the captain's armband in those last 10 minutes. So we had the awkward situation where there was kind of a realisation that he's going to have to lift the trophy at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in front of the Spurs fans. And fair play to him, he repeatedly refused to do it. And he was just like, no. And he went over and spoke in someone's ear. And I think he just realised what it symbolised and how it would look if he went to his old kind of stamping ground, isn't it? Champing at a bit and chomping at a bit is one that people always get wrong. It's meant to be champing, and stomping and stamping ground, I think, is meant to be stamping ground as well. Anyway, the English language. But yeah, I think he realised what it would have symbolised if he went there, and his first game back against Spurs, against a team that we know has failed to win silverware in a long time, and he goes there and lifts a trophy in front of them. It would have looked bad. Lots of, the social media accounts, those football accounts would have loved it and all of that, and they would have, and let's be honest, rival fans would have loved it as well. And I just think that was very switched on, and friendly cup or not, I just thought it was quite cool and classy just to say, no. Because look, Kane will win major trophies with Bayern, he will, and he will want Spurs to do so as well. So there's no kind of ill feeling there at all in that respect. And he was asked after the game about coming back to Spurs. He said, it was strange. Obviously, I'm so used to coming here as the home player, been here on so many times before, so it was strange putting the shirt on, being in the away dressing room, but I like to enjoy these occasions. I had an amazing career at Spurs, so many great memories, and it was just great to see the fans again. So many players and staff I have a lot of relationships with. The game itself, I probably shouldn't have been playing. I only trained yesterday, but I was always going to play 10 minutes, and it was good. Everything was really rushed through last year, so we didn't have the chance to say goodbye. But this was a great way to say thank you to all of them. The reception I got was amazing, and great to clap them around the pitch after those who'd stay behind. And I'll always be thankful for every Spurs fan for the support they've given me throughout my whole career. It's been incredible, and I just appreciate them seeing me and me seeing them again. So yeah, it was nice. It was very cool to be there. I kind of had the option. I could have remained on my few days away in Italy, which was beautiful. But when I was booking it, I saw this game. I thought, oh, do you know what? It's just a nice moment to see Kane back at the stadium, and it ended up being exactly that. But yeah, the other way of looking at it as well, what kind of made me think yesterday was that Kane was one of the leadership group of Tottenham, But then you look at it now, and there's he, Hugo Lloris, Pierre Højbjerg, Eric Dyer, all moved on, and that leaves this new group of leaders. And I did feel like one of them, Romero, just showed how much he's going to protect these young players in this friendly. Mikey Moore, who officially would have begun his new professional contract, I think, this week on his 17th birthday today. I don't think it's going to be announced today. I'd imagine that'll be in the days to come. But Mikey Moore came on for another little cameo, full of kind of fearless attacking play that he brings. There was one lovely turn on the touchline he did. But he had a bit of a rough challenge on him from João Paulina, from the former Fulham player. And Will Lancashire, who'd come on, obviously, steamed in and took out Paulina, and a bit of a late challenge of his own. Didn't really even use his feet. He kind of like barged into him. That didn't go down too well with certain Bayern players, including Kingsley Coman. He's kind of squared up to Moore and Lancashire. You kind of want to say to him, he's 16 and he's 19. Just leave him. But Romero and Bentancur saw them, and Romero steamed up the pitch towards them. I couldn't tell it was either he or Bentancur pushed Coman away, and you could just see Coman very quickly backpedaling. I think he was like, yeah, I'm not getting into this fight. But I loved it. It was very kind of reminded me of the days of yore, the kind of thing you would imagine like a Dave Mackay doing, Graham Roberts, those kind of types, doing for Spurs, and just I like that. I like that aspect of it, and it was it was a leader. It was a leader thing to do. And I do feel like these senior players, Romero's only been back a couple of days and Bentancur, but there's this trust in these younger players. They're seeing just how good they are. As I mentioned Archie Gray earlier, loads of composure and skill and how he used the ball, and he's going to be an absolute star for Spurs. I still maintain, I think he'll end up being the best player at Spurs, Archie Gray. I still feel he is going to become that within the years to come, and I think Lucas Bergvall is going to be a bit of a star as well. But I was watching very closely, and Romero and Bentancur fully trusted Archie Gray. Every chance they had, they were trying to give him the ball down the right. And like I say, that's only after a handful of training sessions with him. They just know, this kid's special. Same with Bergvall. I think they know they've got 2 stars in the making. Same with Mikey Moore. He's only 16 or now 17, but they're going to try and get the ball to him as much as possible. And but look, they do need more experience. Of course they do. We know that. Postecoglou knows that. I think he's kind of looking for at least another couple of signings, because you need a little bit more experience. The likes of a Solanke, a ready-made player to guide these young players through. He had a little bit of a joke. He was asked a question about whether Solanke's arrival had taken most of the transfer budget away, and he said, "You know our budget, do you, mate?" And he said to the reporter, "Look, we'll see. There's still time in the window, and I think there'll still be some activity." So, yeah, he's looking for more players. I mean, the squad told us a little bit yesterday. Giovanni Lo Celso and Sergio Reguilón both left out, showing their likely exit. Sorry, Indy's making some really weird noises down there, huffling and scruffling or whatever he's doing. Emerson Royal wasn't there, obviously Milan bound. A strange situation with Emerson. I think I hinted it in my last video. I'm still not entirely sure of how joined up the thinking is in Milan wanting him and Paulo Fonseca needing a right back as a priority is. But it does look like it's going through. But yeah, I don't think it was quite as advanced as it was made out to be on Friday. It was. I think I put out something saying it's getting there, and it probably is going to get there, but it's not quite at the everything signed and sealed moment yet. But I would imagine it'll be tied up if not today, tomorrow. You would imagine, and that's great for Emerson. It's kind of what he wants. It's where he's wanted to go next. It's kind of always been his destination. Sorry, Indy's walking around the room and it's making me very nervous about what he's going to do next. Good boy. Just lay down. I know this is very weird in the video. I'm sorry. But yeah, as with Lo Celso, I understand he and Dane Scarlett, who was also left out and not injured, which suggests a loan exit, you would imagine, for Dane Scarlett, following in the footsteps of Alejo Velis, obviously, who's gone to Espanyol. And that's just down really to the fact that Will Lancashire has impressed more than them this summer, whether that be in training or matches. They've are going to have to develop elsewhere. Will Lancashire's come in and really great, given a great account of himself, really impressed Postecoglou and the coaches, and those two have not managed to do that as much. So, yeah, they'll head off now. But when it comes to transfers, you know what's coming. It is that we're at that stage where we have to talk about foreign player numbers and homegrown numbers. So I thought he was going to jump up on the sofa. He's getting very restless now. This is weird, isn't it? I could be making this all up and there could be no dog there whatsoever. I'm just an absolute nut talking about this imaginary dog. But he is there. You might hear him huffing and puffing once in a while. So, homegrown and foreign players. I'm definitely going to huff and puff about this. And I'm so sorry in advance if this sounds really convoluted trying to explain it. But because it kind of is convoluted. So Spurs are going to have to be very wary of whoever they bring in now. They're going to have a squad that meets two very different requirements. One is the Premier League squad that they're going to put together, a 25-man squad. The other is their Europa League squad. That is the pain in the backside one. I can say that right from the off. So when we're looking at the Premier League squad, that's a nice and easy one. Let's look at that first. Emerson heading off, Højbjerg having head off, Tongi Mele, Brian Hill all having head off means that Spurs currently have, if you're taking out Emerson now, 16 foreign players in their Premier League squad, which is one under the maximum of 17 they're allowed. So Solanke joins the homegrown element, so which means they have 9 homegrown players over the age of 21. The minimum for homegrown players is 8. That's minimum, not maximum. Don't forget they have lost or let go Ryan Sessegnon, Joe Rodon, Troy Parrott and Japhet Tanganga this summer. Okay, so that's where we are. So as I said, clubs can only name squads of 25 players. But the beauty of the Premier League squad is you don't need to include under 21 players. So Archie Gray, Lucas Bergvall, Dane Scarlett, they can all go on this kind of under 21s list, which is like, it's perfect. It's great. It means when you're signing young 18-year-olds, you don't have to worry about kind of registering them in your main squad. Alejo Velis would have, I think he would have still counted that squad as well on that list. But it doesn't matter, he's now left. So, as I said before, 16 foreign players in the Premier League squad. We expect Lo Celso and Reguilón to leave. That would mean Spurs have 3 foreign player spots open in their Premier League squad. But technically, you'd probably have to take one of those away because they have, like I say, 9 homegrown players over the age of 21. And they've got to fit those in. Don't forget, it's still 25-man squad. So there's no like unlimited number of homegrown players. It's very strange. You could kind of say, why would you not have made a system where you're kind of rewarded for having more homegrown players, but you're kind of not in this aspect. So they've still got to fit in 1 more than the minimum 8. They've got 9. So that means that, technically 2 spots left overall if Lo Celso and Reguilón were to leave. I mean, technically, they've got Fraser Forster, Brandon Austin, Alfie Whiteman in those 3 goalkeepers, as well as Vicario. If in 3 of them all taking up homegrown player spots, maybe you let one of those go. Maybe you look for Alfie Whiteman to get off on loan or something like that. Maybe that's a way of allowing yourself to have another 3rd spot, and of which you would have 3 foreign player spots. Okay, so technically though, at the moment, if they don't choose to do that, they're allowed. For argument's sake, they're allowed 2 more new signings without Postecoglou needing to worry about further exits beyond Lo Celso and Reguilón for his Premier League squad. So let's put that to one side. That's the Premier League squad. That's quite easy enough to manage. That's fine. You can see kind of what you need to remove and you can see what you can then put in. That's fine. Now we go into the Europa League squad. That is the biggest issue for Spurs. And we had this in the past, Spurs. We had this in the Champions League. I remember Pochettino really being devastated. He had to tell Juan Foyth that he was going to have to come out of the Champions League squad. And I think there were a couple of others the next season. I think Mourinho had to leave a few players out as well. So the main reason why it gets messy, there's 2 reasons. But the first one, it really kind of messes up the UEFA squad for Europa League, Champions League, Conference League, whatever you want to call it, is that young player list that I spoke of not exist. It doesn't exist in terms of new signings. There is one for academy players, but that B list is only for players that have been at the club for more than 3 years. So let's say Archie Gray, Lucas Bergvall, it's of no use to Spurs right now whatsoever to them. They get lumped in now in the main group. So, again, if we're expecting Emerson to go, Spurs currently have the maximum 17 foreign players. They're technically called non-locally trained by UEFA. So they've got 17, the exact number they're allowed in their squad, which includes Bergvall. However, they also have 8 association-trained players. So, when it comes to homegrown players in UEFA's eyes, there's 2 different kinds. There are association-trained players who have played under the umbrella of the FA, the English FA, and they're for a certain amount of years, or they've come through that system. And there are club-trained players. They are players that have come through the club and have played a certain amount of years for the club. Now, although Spurs have got 17 foreign players and they're on that maximum limit, they have 8 association-trained players now with Solanke. So that's Solanke, Forster, Davies, Maddison, Johnson, Spence, Gray and Phillips. They unfortunately only have 3 club-trained players, age over 21, in Austin Whiteman and Oliver Skipp. So again, I must stress, you're only allowed 25 players on this A list, the senior player list, of whom 2 at least must be goalkeepers. The rules then say, as a minimum, 8 of those 25 places are reserved exclusively for locally trained players, and no club may have more than 4 association-trained players listed among those 8 places. So essentially what that's saying is you can put 4 of your association-trained players in that locally trained players group. But if you want to fit in another 4, like I said, they've got 8 at the moment, you're going to have to put them in the main bunch, which takes away from your 17 that you currently have, the non-locally trained players. It's an absolute mess, it really is. Like I said, you're not being rewarded for using players from your own country or homegrown players. Right, this is where it gets a little bit messy. I'm sorry, you're going to lose me. I'm sure you are. I'm going to lose myself at this point. So, like I say, 4 of those association-trained players would either have to be registered instead of foreign players or simply left out of the squad. Lo Celso and Reguilon leaving would open up 2 more spots in a non-locally trained group. And you could maybe say Ashley Phillips probably likely to go out on loan again. That takes another person out of the association-trained section. That still leaves 1 more association-trained player somewhere they need to be fitted in. Again, you could maybe take out Fraser Forster, perhaps. That might be an option. But yeah, the other problem is, of course, those club-trained players, because you have to name 4 of those, or at least, I think, leave a space for 1 of them. I think you can do that. And again, I'm very much going off Football Manager and my memory of having to fill those quotas in the game. I think you can leave a space. I think that is a real thing. That's why it's in the game. Otherwise, the alternative would be to take someone like a Jamie Donnelly, I guess, or even Mikey Moore, and putting them from the B list, which they're already in, and putting them in the squad, which is kind of still wasting a spot as it is. And I do wonder why. That's why we've seen links and the club being kind of potentially looking at someone like Marcus Edwards or a Carl Walker-Peters. I can't remember about Noni Madueke, whether he did the required amount of time before he left Spurs. A funny feeling he left before he would have counted. But don't quote me, I'm not sure. I've got to look that one up. It's an absolute minefield. It really is. It's a really convoluted, silly system that, again, like I say, does not reward you for having homegrown players from your own country. So if I've worked it all out right, Spurs still need to leave 2 players out of the squad, even after Lo Celso, Reguilon and Phillips, let's say, left. And that's without signing anyone. So it's going to be a complete mess. Essentially, the Europa League squad is going to be a complete mess unless there are suddenly some departures we don't expect. It does kind of put, I guess, Manor Solomon's future in jeopardy in terms of whether they loan him out or look to move him on. As I've said previously, he hasn't looked the player he was yet in pre-season. Didn't even get on the pitch yesterday as he didn't in the last game either. Mikey Moore's very much keeping him out right now. So I do wonder whether they just think, okay, will we let him go out and play football somewhere? You know, he's a free transfer at the moment. Obviously, Shakhtar very much battling that. And whether they just put him out on loan or something to get his value back up and get his sharpness back. There's also issues of a completely different aspect for Oliver Skipp. Oliver Skipp is the only outfield senior club-trained player that Spurs have. I think there's technically you could use Max Robson, but with no disrespect to Max, he's not been part of the squad setup really. Obviously played in the friendly, was it QPR or Hearts? One of those two. But he hasn't really been part of the setup. So it would be, a bit of an unusual one. And the trouble with Skippy needs to get away. He needs to go and play regular football. He had a funny game yesterday. He came on, looked really shaky to start, and I actually felt he grew into the game. But he needs to go somewhere and be a wanted regular first-team player. But I do wonder whether Spurs can allow that to happen. Like I say, he's the only real, logical senior outfield club-trained player, which is daft. Ridiculous that they've got themselves into this situation. With the quality that's coming through the academy now, you would hope that in a couple of years' time, that's not going to be the case. But right now, it's a complete and utter mess. And look, I still believe that Postecoglou needs at least another, maybe a midfielder/striker, midfielder/winger, who can kind of play both roles, and probably another central defender as well. I think that's one that he's said himself in the past. So, whether just suddenly a move comes for someone that can go out the door, which we weren't expecting, to free up a spot, perhaps. But again, it doesn't massively help the Europa League one because it's the club-trained players that's the issue. So unless they did bring back Marcus Edwards, unless they did bring back, let's say, Jed Spence was allowed to head out and they brought back Kyle Walker-Peters. Again, it's all very much if they did this, if they did that. And I'm absolutely doing what I always say about fans do, and myself. It's taking the players' decision-making ability out of it. It's like when we say, sell Richarlison. It's like, Richarlison doesn't want to go. Oh. And it's like, why didn't Spurs sign this player? Because he wanted to go to another club. Yeah, but that's rubbish. We could have made him come to us. It doesn't work like that. And I'm very much guilty of doing exactly the same thing. And it's the same with like Kyle Walker-Peters. Kyle Walker-Peters come back to be a backup, potentially third in line if Archie Gray ends up playing at right back at times as well. Or maybe they decide that Archie Gray is enough cover there and the Jed Spence redemption doesn't end up happening and he heads off. I'd like to see Jed Spence get another chance, of course, but it may come with the fact that he might be told maybe in Europa League you're not going to get minutes, which is going to be a main source of where his minutes might come from. So maybe they'll say, it's up to you, but it might be better for you to actually have a loan for the first 6 months at least of the season. So it's a mess. I'm hoping you got enough of that. Like I said, if it doesn't look or sound immediately obvious, which I'm sure it doesn't, go and have a look at my talking points. They're on my Twitter feed. It's all explained within the very long article I wrote about everything yesterday. But there you go. C'est la vie. That's Spurs. It just feels like every window I'm talking about homegrown players and all that. And every time players say, why is it all Spurs though? Why is he always bringing that up? Why don't other clubs suffer from this? They do. Honestly, I was seeing some journalists having a go at trying to work out what the Chelsea European squad's going to be like. Good luck with that one. They've just brought in Neto, haven't they? Which is like, just brought so many wingers. I'm torn over the Neto move because I would have loved to see him at Spurs. He's an incredible player, such a talent. Of course, his injuries are a nightmare for him. I think I saw a stat that said that he's got an average of starting 15 Premier League games a season. That's his average because of his injuries. But that doesn't take away from the fact I would have loved to see him at Spurs. But hey, he's made the move to Chelsea. And we'll see kind of what happens with them and their squad of about 74 players. They don't seem to be learning, Chelsea. They're kind of almost like continually bringing more and more in and having to like reportedly bar their own homegrown products from even being part of training and stuff. I do wonder with Chalobah and Spurs. Spurs have looked at Chalobah before. But I just wonder whether his price tag at the moment, I think it's around 30, is maybe not what they're kind of looking to spend on someone that's going to be the fourth of their centre-back ones. I'm not saying it's fourth in line. It's all about competition, like I said earlier. But maybe if you're putting more money in towards your targets, probably the more money is going to be spent on the midfielder, whether that ends up being a six, whether that ends up being a more kind of a attacking player who can also play out wide. We'll see. That's a whole other kind of thing we need to get into probably in the next video. But yeah, so Postecoglou's got loads of decisions to make. He and the club have got to not only decide about who they want to bring in, but they've got to decide how that impacts their European squad and what they do about that. That also has a knock-on effect on what players can then head out on loan among the young players, because I do think there's a lot of them that need to head off. Like Alfie Devine, I'm pretty sure he'll head out on loan. But then what do you do about Will Lancashire and Jamie Donnelly, players like that, Jamie Donnelly, and what they're going to do, you know, because Jamie Donnelly especially needs regular football now, I think. Will Lancashire, I could definitely see you keeping him around for 6 months or so, not you personally, but Spurs, for the next 6 months, just for there to get experience and for the first team, maybe minutes here and there. But they've got to decide about these players and where they go and what they do. And that squad, that Europa League squad, I think it's got to be named at the end of the season. It's actually the season, that'd be weird. At the end of the window, I think it's normally a couple of days after the window closes. It's going to be fascinating to see whether they have to leave players out. It really is. But there you go. It's the nature of the game. That's what it's all about. That's why you need to kind of build your squad properly over the years and not leave someone like Postecoglou to have to kind of deal with the fallout now, I suppose. Yeah, just hopefully the transfer window unfolds in his favour and he gets some offers in for the players that just need to head out the door. Let me know in the comments like how you would solve it. Is there any players that we haven't mentioned that you would actually be happy to let go? And whether you would like to see them go for someone like a Marcus Edwards or a Kyle Walker-Peters. It's not the greatest selling of the club for those players. Come back. We've got no real choice. Come on, come back. You'll be like a token gesture in a squad. And we might get you some minutes. It's not the greatest selling point in the world. Yeah, but there you go. There you go. So I might try to do a midweek one, possibly. Might try and do a Q&A, because obviously otherwise the next video is not going to be until probably Tuesday next week, obviously with the game on Monday night. So yeah, if you want to get some questions in about various things, and we'll maybe try and do one later this week, middle of the week, later this week, and yeah, have another chat about all things Tottenham Hotspur. But I am going to go. It is getting warm. You can probably see I'm starting to get a bit glistening on the old forehead. There's a random one. Timo Werner currently watching Sheffield Wednesday against Plymouth at Hillsborough. I think he's been there before. Hasn't he got a connection with the manager there? I'm sure he has. There's a connection. But there you go. Very off topic right at the end. Well, not really, but off track. Right, time to head off. I'm sorry, that's my days off, holidays used anyway until October when I'm away, which is of no real use to you. I am technically got next weekend off because of the Monday game. I took that so I could just spend some time with the family. So yeah, maybe something happens next weekend. Wednesday is my normal day off, so look, I'm leaning into this thing because it just seems to happen. There's nothing I can do about it. I can whinge and moan about being asked a billion times on social media every day, like, when's your next holiday? When are you going away? Can we crowdfund you to have a holiday? I could go, oh, stop it. But it kind of happens, so I can't exactly run and hide from it. Absolutely not. So I kind of might as well. If you can't beat them, join them. And hey, yeah, there you go. But I'd imagine my boss doesn't want me to have too many days off. Time to head off. Time to open some windows because it's boiling. And yeah, we'll see what the next few days brings, and hopefully some more updates on who can come in, who goes out, and how in the world we sort out that Europa League squad for next month. there you go. Time to head off. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.